our brain is attracted to candy, like bright colors, right? So that's why marketing companies have kind of hijacked that function of our brain. So we are attracted to bright colored ads and bright colored candy wrappers. But really what our brain wants is fruit and vegetables that are brightly colored. So if you have a brightly colored plate, you're probably doing a pretty good job.
So why is bacon so attractive then?
I know, that's just, I know. Have they figured out what's in bacon yet that makes it so addictive? I know.
Good evening, this is Chaplain Lawrence with Commander Fleet Activity Sasebo, here with another episode of Taps with Chaps. Today we're going to continue our discussion on resiliency, and we have a very special guest who is right in the mix of the resiliency issue. Our guest is Lieutenant Commander Madeline Teisberg. Madeline is the Fibron Psych Doc, and so welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? What's some of the duty stations you've had?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Oh.
So I have come to Sasebo from Walter Reed and my training in DC. And this is definitely my first operational command, the first time I've gotten to go on ships. It's been pretty exciting. I think I might have the best job in the Navy, although I know that there are some people who would fight me for that.
Yeah. One of the interesting things about your position, is you get to interact with so many different entities, so many different commands, sailors of all kinds of stripes, so to speak. And so in the resiliency wheelhouse, kind of how do you see that? How do you define that? What does it look like for you in your field?
So I'm a psychiatrist, which means I went to medical school, and then I did extra training in psychiatry in terms of pharmacologic management and also therapy. And so I have like one particular niche, and I am the only one here in Sasebo. There are some other psychiatrists up in Yokosuka, but I have a really great team here in Sasebo that addresses a lot of the mental health and resiliency needs. On each ship, I work with a great chaplain corps. I have a wonderful psych tech, HM2 Herald, that I think a lot of people have had the chance to meet. And then also we've got wonderful medical teams. The GMOs and the SMOs and the IDCs across the waterfront are excellent. And then additionally on base, we've got 2 psychologists. Unfortunately, we'll be losing Lieutenant Viz soon, but we'll be getting another great addition to the team in December, I think. And we've also got a social worker and Lieutenant Moon, and so they do a lot to support sailors as well. And then we also have Fleet and Family, and a lot of people are familiar with their wonderful resources with couples counseling, individual counseling, just transitioning in or out or wherever you're going. Fleet and Family kind of does it all.
Oh, yeah.
And then we also have some great military family life counselors. And I know that due to COVID, we had a little gap for a while, but they're coming back. And soon we'll have 1, and then I hope for 2 before the end of the year.
That would be wonderful. That'd be terrific.
So I guess I jump in and I help sometimes with the medical side of the house. So I get to work with people and help them, neurologically rebalance with medications, and then also do some great stuff with therapy.
So what does kind of resiliency mean to you? How would you define that term?
So for me, resiliency, it's thrown around so much these days, I almost feel like it doesn't mean anything anymore to some people. But I think of it, we've all had a lot of challenges to get just where we are right now. And so everybody here is already pretty resilient. And we've all come up with kind of a story for ourselves and how we've overcome challenges. And, they've done studies on people who are really resilient. And what they often do is they tell themselves a story about how this difficult situation, plays a role in their life story. And so what is it that they did to overcome this challenge? How did it shape them, inform them, and it becomes just part of who they are. So I think of resiliency as, I guess, how we take challenges and weave it into our story.
Yeah, that's amazing. Taking ownership of those challenges and making them a part of you, and moving forward and growing from those, I think is a great part of the resiliency piece. What are some of the pieces of the puzzle of resiliency, and how to stay resilient, and what does that look like in terms of your particular field and your expertise? Maybe what are some of the tools that we can put in our toolbox to stay resilient and build resiliency?
Well, so I mean, I often go down the 5 actions, the things that we can really control. I always talk first and foremost about what do you control and what do you not control. Because a lot of times when we talk about challenges we're facing and things we need to be resilient from, it's stuff we have no control over. We talk a lot about COVID and restrictions in our movements, and we can't change those things. So I try to focus more on the stuff that you actually can do.
Yeah.
So action pieces, I first start out with sleep.
Yeah.
That really is huge. A human brain needs 6 to 8 hours of sleep. So unless you have a different brain in there, then usually 6 to 8 hours is really helpful. And sometimes we forget that, working so hard on ships or having young kids. I know that families also struggle with getting that. So getting a good, at any point in time, you can always just reset your sleep. Just deciding to get a good routine down. And there are some great apps actually that can help you do that. The CBTI Coach app was made by DoD, and it's actually very good about just educating you on some basic sleep stuff. And doing some mindfulness meditations and things like that before you fall asleep can help you get a much better, longer night's sleep.
Yeah, sleep's really important. If you don't have sleep, you don't function very well.
Yeah, I think of it like the day crew and the night crew. Different parts of your brain actually activate when you're sleeping. They've done functional MRI studies where you can actually visually see it. So if you're not getting enough sleep, then the night crew is not taking out the trash. So there's a bunch of stuff in the way during the day that makes it harder to function. And so that's kind of how I justify it. Getting the full 8 hours, because sometimes it feels like you're just not doing anything then.
Yeah.
But you really are.
So. Sleep is one of those critical tools, and you said that there were 5. What are the other 4, just out of curiosity?
So exercise, another huge one.
Yep.
So making sure that your brain releases endorphins, which is one of the ways that we can deal with stress in the moment. Endorphins actually a lot of them have chemical structures that are similar to morphine, which is a painkiller. So when we are experiencing any kind of pain, but emotional pain especially, which can be hard to deal with, endorphins can be kind of a pain reliever for us. And so, if you're experiencing a lot of distress in the moment, you can get some endorphin release by doing at least 20 minutes or so of cardio. Getting your heart rate elevated will get you that release. Yeah. So exercise is huge, and just a little bit every day. I know that there have been, everybody's like, I know I should exercise more, and that's a thing that everybody is constantly working on. There was a guy who said, I think 80% of the world's health problems could be eradicated if we all just exercise for 20 minutes a day. I don't think that's been backed up by science yet, but it does go a long way.
Well, and now especially that some of the HPCon restrictions are easing a little bit. Base gyms are starting to open more, and so people have access to that. Yeah. And that's an excellent resource. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a win for everybody. Base gyms are opening up again bit by bit within the region, so huge win. So sleep and exercise and also there's
a bunch of hikes. You were talking about, you went on a great hike
this
weekend.
Exactly, yeah.
And I went on a different hike down in Hirado to Mount Shinjiki,
yeah.
Which was like a ropes course. It was pretty adventurous. But there are a lot of places in Nagasaki Prefecture that are just beautiful hikes, and getting out of Sasebo just does a lot. Hiking in nature on top of being active is kind of a 2-for-1.
Get that sunlight and that vitamin D.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yes, exercise is huge. And it's nice when you just focus on something small. Some people who used to exercise a lot sometimes have a hard time coming back to it because they're not in the same shape. And they're like, I need to do my 60 to 90 minute workout, or I used to be in this kind of shape. And that doesn't particularly help us get back into things. So just focusing on doing 20 minutes of something that is enjoyable for you actually makes a big difference. Yeah. So that's how I go with that one. And then, the next one I talk about is diet, which is kind of a threefold thing. I think about eating a balanced diet, and I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm not going to belabor that point, but eating a lot of fruits and vegetables makes a difference. Our brain is attracted to candy, like bright colors, right? So that's why marketing companies have kind of hijacked that function of our brain. So we are attracted to bright colored ads and bright colored candy wrappers, but really what our brain wants is fruit and vegetables that are brightly colored. So if you have a brightly colored plate, you're probably doing a pretty good job.
So why is bacon so attractive then?
I know, that's just I know. Have they figured out what's in bacon yet that makes it so addictive? I know. And then I think about caffeine. So, caffeine itself isn't horrible for you, but not having, having multiple pots of coffee a day, not great. And I think energy drinks, they do a number on us that is hard to quantify because we haven't done a ton of studies on it yet. But that's my soapbox. Energy drinks, they'll keep you up, but then they kind of body slam you as you're coming down with your energy and your focus and your mood sometimes too. So anyway, staying away from that stuff, and then also alcohol, which may go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Alcohol is a depressant, and so that tends to really make it difficult for your brain to tackle the problems that it's already having. It might feel good temporarily, but then usually I think of it like holding a tree branch back. We were hiking this weekend, and then letting it kind of hit you in the face later. Yeah, that's sort of how it works if you're using alcohol to deal with stress. As somebody was talking to me about it at one point, and it was like, don't fall into the trap of having a drink to relax. It's a trap. So it's, I always think of that like, it's a trap. Yeah, exactly. When somebody says that, like, I just need one to relax. So just kind of watching that and making sure you have some basic rules for yourself around those things, those indulgences. That can really help.
I think if you're struggling with the alcohol issue in particular, I know here at CFAS and probably other commands, they have Alcoholics Anonymous, they have DAPAs, they have those resources for you to reach out. If you think alcohol is an issue for you or somebody that putting them in touch with those resources is really important.
Absolutely. And you're starting the AA group back up on base, yep. Actually tonight.
Yep, first meeting for AA tonight.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, well, and today happens to be Monday.
Yes.
The 22nd. So Mondays at 17, right? You're doing it at the CEC?
Yep. And every installation, I'm sure, has an AA or has an AA around the base or the command. So AAs are really important for service members to reach out if that's something they struggle with.
Definitely. Yeah, well, SATSBO is a smaller base, and so I think knowing about the few resources we have, sometimes people don't know because there aren't a lot of meetings outside base like there are in most cities. Yeah. But there certainly are on a number of the ships and here, the one you run at CEC, so yeah. It's wonderful.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, and then, so the next thing I think about is connectedness.
Yes, very important.
And that can be kind of vague, and a lot of times we discount relationships and how being connected to others as something that helps us deal with stress and being resilient. But it's one of the things that helps us live longer and actually helps us balance things. If you're able to talk to somebody about your stress, it feels better.
In fact, living longer and connectedness, you were telling or sharing with me a story about this town in Italy that was transplanted. Maybe you could share that.
I'm not going to. So if you really want to hear the story, go read the book Blink, and there's a whole chapter about this particular town. But I thought it was a great example of the way connectedness helps us thrive on a lot of levels, because this town in Italy ended up kind of transplanting itself into Pennsylvania, and what the medical professionals in the area started noticing is that they were healthier, like lower hypertension, lower rates of diabetes, cholesterol, all that stuff. And so they're like, well, we're going to study this town, and we're going to figure out why they're so healthy. Like, it's probably genetics, right. Because this is the area they're from, and they live longer there. And it wasn't that, because if you moved away from the town, suddenly you were just as much at risk of other health problems as everyone else in the world. Right. And so then they looked at it, and they were like, well, maybe it's the diet, or something about the lifestyle or the soil in that area. And they looked at all these things, and it turns out it was the one thing that they were able to pinpoint was being part of a community, that everybody knew each other. You checked on your neighbors, you could walk down the street and say hi to people, and that there was really a tight unit. And there's another book, Tribes, where it talks about how humans kind of evolve to function the best in kind of smaller groups. And it's borne out in a lot of different scenarios. People are deployed to combat zones, and with that kind of cohesive group where you sort of depend on each other, you find a lot of belonging and a lot of purpose, and that really helps you deal with extremely stressful situations.
Yeah, having connectedness, I think, whether it's within your department or your division or your ship or your community or your housing, your CHO, wherever you're at, the connectedness piece is just really critical to forming good, healthy, balanced relationships. And then those relationships in turn become support mechanisms.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that happens neurochemically when you connect with somebody, and the tricky part about relationships is that it involves being a little bit vulnerable, and being a real person, acknowledging that maybe you don't feel like you have it all together that day, or asking for help. And it turns out that those moments, going through something difficult with somebody, can make your relationship so much stronger. And so it's a cool opportunity. All this COVID stress, and even going underway and coming back in port, that can be a great opportunity to bond with people that you're going through difficult things with. But I also think about the families.
Yes.
And how families are units, and there is a whole deployment cycle that families go through. I'm sure people here are very familiar with it. When someone's getting ready to leave, there are kind of mental gymnastics that we do to get ready to say goodbye, and then there's an adjustment period when you come back and rejoin the family, because you've both been operating on your own separately for a while, and then coming back together, and where does everyone fit? And it's just so important to continue to welcome people back and to feel that belonging. It goes such a long way with dealing with the stress.
Absolutely. So was there a fifth component, or were those all five?
Oh yeah, yep. So the fifth one is self-care, and a lot gets kind of lumped into the self-care. So I think of it as time that you can use to do a lot of different things. If you have a lot of emotions going on, finding something that you can do to create in the moment. I always think there's two kinds of self-care. There's engaged self-care, and then there's escape self-care. Escape self-care being like Netflix and watching TV shows. Reading, I think, kind of straddles the two a little bit, because you're a little more active in your mind when you're reading. But something that takes you away from where you are and the stressors you're dealing with. We all do that. We all need that sometimes. Yes. So I always say, you can't be here mentally all the time. But and then we also need to have engaged kind of self-care. So writing, journaling, painting, drawing, sculpture, woodworking, mechanics. There's all kinds of things that people do. Origami. I've been really interested and impressed with some of the talents and things that people bring to the table. Music. I have been trying to learn the guitar for like a year and a half, and it's not going great. But that is something that I can do for myself. That makes sure that I've done something for me every day, because the Navy is going to continue to demand a lot of all the sailors and their families on a regular basis. And so to pull back and just know that you've done something every day to kind of take care of yourself. One
of the things I've tried is cooking. Cooking new things, learning new recipes to cook. Trying, experimenting. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of a de-stressor for me of I'm going to just zone out and do something productive at the same time, and learn a new skill or sharpen a skill. Mm-hmm. That's going to be useful to me, and I think that's very helpful to a lot of sailors, having a skill that they can kind of hone in on or learn. Yeah, and it's not so much a skill. I always tell people, you don't have to show your work to anybody. You don't have to necessarily want to display this or sell it. It's really just because you enjoy doing it in the moment. I would definitely not want anybody to put my cooking creations up on Pinterest. Pinterest fail for sure. I could get on that Netflix show. I forget what anyway, the one where they try to imitate Pinterest and they fail miserably. It's hilarious. Yeah. Because everyone can identify with that. Right. But it's really just about the act of just going through and doing it. Some of my friends were learning how to make gyoza from scratch, which isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And just I think the part is getting curious. If you can embrace curiosity, that goes so far. If you're just curious about how am I going to get through this, at least that it opens a window where you might have just seen a wall previously. And I think it kind of speaks to the growth mindset. Mm-hmm. You remember we were talking about this before, like when you're playing video games. Do you play? I do play video games. Yeah, what do you play? Oh, I don't know if I want to say it on camera. Okay, fair. All right. Well, so I'm terrible at video games. I will just come clean with that. I'm awful. And so when I play, I basically die every time. But for some reason, it's still fun to continue to go back and try again. And that's true of most people across the board. I mean, maybe there are plenty of savants that are really good. Well, you don't have to die multiple times a level to get to the next one, but usually you have to try more than once. I empathize, because I did pick up Call of Duty because the MAs play, and the MAs wanted Chaps to play with them. So I die all the time. The MAs have to carry me through Call of Duty, but it's but it's good for them and it's good for me. So.
It's a team effort.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but for some reason, even when you have to start all the way over again, it's still fun.
Right.
And sometimes we're really good at applying that mindset to certain parts of our life, but we're not great at applying it to other areas of our life, right? So maybe great at applying it to our video games, but at work it feels like we're stuck.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's our relationships. I feel like they're not going anywhere. And opening up, just being curious about like what else could you do? Like what other angle could you approach this from? Maybe stepping back and trying to learn a different skill or reading a book on it. But acknowledging the fact that like this isn't necessarily a wall for you, but just the beginning of a step. That it's going to get you to the next level. And then at that next level, you'll find different, hopefully better problems, where you'll then level up again. And if you go through life and you approach the challenges like that, I mean, you could call that resilience if you wanted to, but it's just it's not letting your world get small because you've hit walls. It's allowing yourself to say, "Yep, that's hard," and it's okay. It's okay that you don't already know everything.
Yeah.
Because if you keep hitting walls and avoiding them, then your world starts to become smaller.
And I think that's kind of a great lead into kind of our final point, which is, when you reach that wall where things are hard and they're difficult, and it's okay to recognize that, and it's okay to ask for help. Say I need some help. And what are some of the things that are available to help sailors, to help families? What are the resources out there where they can go and say, I need help with this?
Yeah. Well, always you can start with Fleet and Family. You can always start with medical, right? And you can always start with chaplains. And maybe just the take home would be that wherever you reach out to, we are a team here. The support resources here on base, we work together in a lot of different ways. And so if you go to one and you need to be, directed to a different one, like that's fine. We'll get you there. But whoever it is you reach out to for help can.
Yeah.
And I think that that's helpful to know.
Yeah, I think all of us who are in the support world, it is very much a one team, one fight. We're here to help the sailers, help the families with whatever they need, and so.
Yeah. I'm not possessive, right?
Exactly.
If I know of someone else they need to talk to, like we'll get them there. What else was I going to say to that end? We wanted to talk about the resources that were available on base. And also making sure that people are thinking outside the box in terms of the resources that are available in the prefecture. We've sometimes we can get into a box. I know when we first got here, I've heard over and over again, well, I'm just not going to leave base because I don't know where I can go. It keeps changing. I don't want to get in trouble. Or I'm just going to stay and stay kind of, in my cho, or doing the things that I know are okay. And as things open up, I think it's important to challenge yourself to go out and do some new things. Right now we can go out, we can eat in restaurants, we can take the train to Nagasaki, and while that's available, I really encourage people to try and get outside their comfort zones and just explore a little bit, get curious about what else you might enjoy. Yeah,
I mean, within the region, whether you're in South Korea or in northern Japan or in Okinawa, or even all the way in Diego Garcia, whatever you're available or able to do within your region and the HPCon levels to go and avail yourself of that.
It's not just here, that's right.
Yeah, and it's always kind of sad for me to hear, sailors spending a whole tour in Japan and they never got to see Japan, or they never got to see Korea, or wherever they're at geographically. Like, go and see and do some of that stuff as the opportunity, avails itself.
I think I've been lucky to have some people who had explored and figured out the ropes to take and introduce me to some of these areas. And so almost always you can look around and find somebody who is exploring, and if that hasn't been your thing, just asking, because I know while there are people who aren't going places, there are a lot of people who are. And just getting curious and asking to tag along, or even signing up for MWR trips as they become available again. Those are all great ways to learn how to do it.
Yep.
It is more likely if you're well-intentioned that you are not going to get yourself in trouble just by going out to kind of experience the culture. And just get outside of your head. If you're going through a rough time, we already know what happens if you keep doing the same thing that you've been doing. So figuring out how to shake it up a little bit.
Yep. And of course, when in doubt, if you're not sure you can or can't do something, always ask your chain of command. That's the default response. But great, and Dr. Teisberg, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about resiliency and how you as a mental health provider are just a key essential player in the resiliency piece of keeping our sailors and our families fit to fight. So.
Oh, well, that's very flattering. But I think a lot of this happens. Like these conversations happen on the deck plate all the time. I know that there are first classes, second classes, chiefs, across the board, people are doing this, and families are doing this for their sailors, and sailors are doing this for their families. We have a lot of resiliency already in the community. So,
yeah. And it's just going to get better, I think, as time goes on. I hope.
No, I agree. Yeah. So I feel really lucky to be out here doing this, working with such great people.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming, and thank you to all of you for all the work that you do for the fleet, for our families, for our nation. This is Chaplain Lawrence signing off. We'll see you next week with the episode of Chaps, Taps with Chaps. Thanks.